Every business's success depends on finding and hiring the right people. Unfortunately, businesses get this wrong pretty much every single day, and the effects can be really damaging. According to research from JobVite, 33% of new employees quit their jobs in their first 90 days, which is brutal, not only from a financial perspective, but also just from a team morale perspective to lose someone so quickly. And in a tight labor market like we have today, there seems to be an endless amount of opportunities that are available, and companies are aggressively looking to fill those positions at their companies with the best talent in the market, making it extremely difficult for you to find the perfect person for your job. But that doesn't mean that we should resort to hiring just anyone to fill our roles that are needed. So what do you do to ensure that you get the best available talent to join your organization? In this episode of Solving Inbound, we're going to show you how to apply some of the core principles of inbound marketing to your hiring process. Welcome back to another episode of Solving Inbound. My name is Connor Delaney, joined by the wonderful John Becker. And today we're talking about how to apply inbound marketing to your hiring process. But John, where do we start with this conversation? Because there's a lot of different places to go.
There are a lot of different places to go. And this is, I think, a pretty hot topic right now. A lot of people are talking about this. We're hearing a lot of chatter. We've published some things on this recently. And so I think it's out there. And as you said, it's such a tight labor market that people are more aware than ever that they have to find the right people. And that's hard. So let's start by just kind of establishing some of those principles. When we talk about applying inbound marketing principles to hiring, what do we mean? What does that actually look like?
So there's two that come to mind. And the first one is, I think we fall into the trap of not thinking of our job candidates as customers or prospects. And really, they're coming to your company in a similar fashion. They should be treated, your job candidates should be treated like customers. And there's really good ways for you to apply inbound to, you think about how you apply inbound marketing to the visitors to your website, and the candidates that come to your website should be treated the same way. And the second one is creating content for your hiring process, which can sound a little funky. And we're going to talk through some of the ways that you do that through either creating video content as well as written content. And we'll share some really cool examples too. But actually creating content is going to make not only your industry smarter, but your job prospects smarter too.
Absolutely. And I love that idea that a candidate is a kind of customer in a way. And it's something that causes us to sort of reimagine the hiring process. But I think it's a valuable way to think about it. You know, first and foremost, just like with a customer, your candidate, you guys are vetting each other. As someone is applying to your company, you're looking into their background, their experience, their education, et cetera. And they're looking into you. They're reading about your company culture. They're seeing who's on your team. They're trying to learn everything they can about the role to know if it's a good fit. Because as you said, if 33% of people leave their jobs within 90 days, which is staggering. That's because they were hired for the wrong fit. Like that only is true if people are coming on board and it's not a good fit for them, or it wasn't what they thought it was going to be, or something like that. Like that's kind of on the business. You can't do a bait and switch with people. You have to be as clear as possible, just as you are with your customers. You don't want to trick people into becoming your customers. You want to be really upfront about what that's going to be. And you want to do the same thing with your employees so that they have a really clear idea of what their role is going to be, what their day-to-day responsibilities are going to be. And so you vet each other just like you would as a customer.
And you think about, you mentioned it, John, the journey or the mindset shift that you have when you think of a job candidate as a customer. There's so many questions or so many pieces of information that you want to provide to your customer that you probably don't think you're providing to your candidate when you start thinking of them as a customer yourself, because you want to gain their business. Especially like we mentioned, it is really competitive out there. And if you're not earning their business by earning them as a client or as a staff member, it's the same thing. It's like you're losing business to a potential prospect or a potential client, like I mentioned. And to that point of vetting people, like you don't want to waste your time. And we've talked a lot about this in the kind of content you create, like that assignment selling content, that sales enablement content. You want that prospect to feel like they not only are qualified to work for you, but that you're a good company for who they are and the skills that they bring. The less time that you have to spend, vetting 200 prospects because your job description doesn't really nail it, the more time that you can actually spend onboarding someone else, because what a waste of time. And I think we're all going to agree, what a waste of time it feels like when you read through 50 resumes and none of them have anything to do with the job that you're trying to hire for. And that's not their fault. That's more likely than not, that's the company's fault for not taking the time to think about who do we actually need in this role. And they weren't able to disqualify themselves.
It's important to just sort of think about it like that, that these candidates do sort of move through a process that's similar to a buying process. It's just like a funnel. If you think of the marketing funnel was, starting with awareness and moving all the way down towards decision, you're doing kind of something similar with a job opening. You're having a lot of people are going to see it, and a smaller number are going to apply, and a smaller number are going to sort of move through each step of the interview process until one or two, whatever it is, depending on the role, actually get the job. And just as you're saying, like there's content that's well suited to every stage. And maybe the first one is the job description, the job posting, that if that's not accurate, if that doesn't, I think we've probably all seen good and bad job descriptions. There are job descriptions that feel just, so generic and bland. And then there are ones that really
copy and pasted.
Yeah, exactly. And then there are ones that really convey the spirit and the culture of the company, that really clearly talk about the role, that do things like address salary, right off the bat, things that, come on, people want to know what salary is. It's just like your customers want to know cost. And if you're not addressing cost, as we say at Impact all the time, customers think you have something to hide. Right. Employees or potential employees think you have something to hide. If you're talking all about how great it is to work at your business, but you're not telling someone what you're actually going to pay them, how seriously are they going to consider? How seriously are the best candidates going to consider making a move to your company? So right. Keep that in mind, that they are moving down a funnel just as customers are. So another way that candidates are actually like customers. And I think, connected to that, and we've kind of started addressing this, but it's worth spelling it out. Your candidates are asking a lot of the same questions that your customers have. We at Impact always say that the first thing that every customer wants to know is price. And just as I said before, the first thing that every candidate wants to know realistically is salary. Yeah. They want to ask questions about, what are the drawbacks of working at your company? What are what are the cultural elements that are kind of hard to describe? What are the, how does this role compare to that role at your company? How do you compare to your competitors? So just as you think that a buyer might potentially go with your competitor instead of you, your candidate might go with your competitor instead of you as well. It's like you said, it's a tight labor market and we are all competing.
And, to the point of the funnel too, to tie those two pieces together, like they ask different questions at different points of that hiring process. When you're first, to your point of the salary and the cost question, like that's a very early on question. And I know, if I'm looking at jobs, and I have no intentions of leaving Impact, but when you go on LinkedIn and you see salaries all over the place, if I don't see a salary, I'm not likely to give it much thought because it feels like I'm hiding something, but I'm seeing that very early in the process. And salary may come up as you get closer, but if I know it up front, at least a range, if it's, I don't know, 45 to 65,000. Yeah, it's a broad range, but at least it gives me an idea that I'm not going to get paid 100K a year. But then as you go further down the process, to your point, like it might be more about culture. It may be about what does the onboarding experience look like? What are the first 6 months? How do you cover, like, what do my day-to-day responsibilities look like? That happens when you're physically talking to someone, whether it be over Zoom or in person, wherever you are doing your interviewing. That process comes along later. Or who am I going to be working with? What does my team structure look like? Those questions come later, but everyone's going to ask them. And you can use content to answer those questions throughout that hiring process too.
Exactly. And as we say at Impact all the time, use content to answer those basic questions so that the meetings you have are more productive. As we say in the sales process, give content beforehand that's going to get those major questions out of the way so that in the conversation, you can focus on that prospect's individual needs. And for anyone who's ever been in an interviewing role where you're interviewing candidates, you know you're getting asked the same questions over and over and over again. And imagine if you could speed that whole process up, make it more effective and more efficient by having the content that's going to answer those basic questions, that's going to give them as clear an idea as possible ahead of time, what they'll be doing, who they'll be working with, what their day-to-day looks like, et cetera, so that they go into everything eyes wide open and you don't end up having to refill the role in 6 months because it just wasn't a good fit. And it's a shame how often that happens. It doesn't serve the company, it doesn't serve the employee, and the damage is significant. Hiring and onboarding is expensive. Losing a team member is expensive. So the better you can do it up front, the more benefits you get in the long run.
You're gonna have better conversations too. And I that sounds like a silly part of this, but you usually have 30 minutes to an hour maybe of during the hiring process, I guess, depending on your status of the role. If you're a VP, they might want to talk to you a little bit more. But if you think about you're hiring like a frontline employee or like a manager level, you probably aren't giving yourself more than an hour to talk to this person. But if you're spending 15 to 20 minutes answering the same questions you know you're going to get anyway, if you sent that content ahead of time and they could read it over and say, this all sounds great, I'm really looking for the conversation, you get 20 minutes back to actually you can ask more detailed, more personalized questions. And I do a lot of, resume reviews and interviewing practices with recent college graduates. And a lot of what I say is make sure that they want to have a personalized conversation with you. Make sure that your resume and that every piece of content you give them, which again, resume, cover letter, maybe a website, that it piques their interest to want to know more about you, not just as a whole, how do you answer the call for this role? But I want to know you as a person. I want to know you from your experience, not the broad questions tell me about a time where you failed. Get them to want to know more specifics about you. And you get those 20 minutes back to be able to do that. But John, I've got some really good examples of applying content in the hiring process. Now, I don't know is now a good time, or is there any other points that you want to make sure you brought up before we?
I was going to say one more thing before we dive into
Sure.
examples, and I'm really excited to look at those. There's a famous quote from Bill Gates where he said, "A great writer of software is worth 10,000 times the price of an average writer of software." And I think we all know. Any of us who've looked at stacks of resumes know that it is hard to tell. A lot of people look really similar. How does candidate A compare to candidate B and C and D and E? If you can have more meaningful conversations like you're talking about, Connor, if you can get past the sort of housekeeping that you need to do in every interview, you answer those questions with content, you address everything up front, then you do have those better conversations, those richer and deeper conversations. Doesn't mean you're always going to make the perfect hire. That's impossible, but it puts you in a position to be able to tell the difference between someone who is good and someone who is great. And as Bill Gates says, that difference, when applied to your business on the long term, is enormous. And making the right hire can be a game changer for your business. So let's look at some examples, because a lot of companies that we work with are doing this right now. They're saying hiring is important, recruiting is important, onboarding is important. We want those people, we want to find great people, we want those people to come and stay. And that doesn't happen accidentally. So let's look at some examples of how companies are actually doing this using content to improve their recruiting and hiring process.
Awesome. So the first example that I brought, John, is from a local insurance agency in Massachusetts named Barry Insurance, who we've probably mentioned once or twice before on this podcast. And I'm going to look at how they've applied this to their written content first. And then we'll look at video a little bit later with another organization. But what's really cool, and for those who are listening, I'm going to share my screen and walk through some of these examples. So definitely check out the YouTube recording. We'll leave some of the resources in the description as well if you want to click into them. But I'm going to hop into Barry Insurance's Learning Center. And what's really cool is on the left-hand side, they have filtering by category, and one of them is Team Barry Insurance. And what this is catered on, and they've been adding content to this more and more recently as they've been making some hires, is it goes through educating potential hires on some expectations they can have. And these stay pretty high level, or more at like the top of the funnel that we talked about. But one of the ones that stands out to me in particular is, what is the salary of an insurance account manager? And to John, to your point earlier, this talks a lot about like the cost question that we hear with They Ask You Answer. And when we're applying it to inbound, they're creating an article that's not just about Barry Insurance, but it's about the insurance agency as a whole. So not only are they establishing themselves as a voice of truth, but when you click into the article, it really takes you through, what you may be feeling. And then it lays out a range, and the range is pretty big. It's 45,000 to 75,000. But what I love about it, and this is very similar to what we do with writing about cost articles that customers may read, is they break down how that salary comes around, and its location, licensure, work schedule, prior experiences, job duties, insurance. It lays out a whole bunch of them, and it just keeps scrolling down. And then it takes them to another article at the end that's 7 qualities you need to be a successful insurance account manager. It lays out the next step that you can take, or if you're interested in learning more about what Barry Insurance may have to offer as a career opportunity, you can go and learn there. But they're actually educating their prospects, their job candidates, on how to be the best employee they can be. And this doesn't just apply to Barry Insurance. And I think that's the best part of it, is this is industry wide what you can expect. John, what do you
love
take
it? And what I know of Barry is that they're growing, and they have plans at least to put about 20% of their content efforts towards hiring and recruiting content. So most of the content, like all of our clients, most of the content that they're writing is for their customers, answering customer questions, talking about insurance needs and anything else that's specific to their industry. And now Barry Insurance is spending about 20% of their time doing exactly what you're saying, Connor, writing content so that they can fill the roles that are opening up as their company grows. So educating, that's a real top of the funnel type article. Someone might be anticipating a career change, and they want to know, what does this look like? What kind of money would I make? What would my schedule look like? They land on Barry Insurance. Just like all inbound marketing, it's a long play, but maybe that person who is clicking on that article in a few weeks or a few months might be someone who applies to Barry, might be someone who's a great fit, might be that exceptional employee that Barry doesn't even know is out there, but they find Barry through this, through this piece of content. And this is obviously especially applicable if it's a company that allows remote work, because you could be recruiting someone from anywhere.
It's a great point. The second example I want to bring up from Barry Insurance goes a little bit further down the funnel, and it's actually kind of like a problems article. And the title of it, and I'll share it in a second, is What Insurance Agents Need to Unlearn When Moving to a New Agency. So this starts to address a little bit more of, here's common things we see when you join a new agency that can cause friction. And this one in particular stands out as something that's really beneficial for, John, to your point, like I've been in this industry already and I just want to change to someone else. Now you're setting the expectation of, here's what we've seen. And some of the examples they go through are policies and procedures, culture and practices, carrier guidelines. I know how to talk. Systems and technologies. It takes them through some of the things that they've already seen in hiring for insurance agents and how to prepare for that. And that would be a great piece of content. If you ask me, it could be sent really early on. It could be sent right before they make the job offer, of make sure that you know that these things may come up, especially for people who maybe have been at the same agency for 10, 15 years. It seems like one of those industries where people may not move around too often. But imagine you get sent this article as a candidate and you say, oh, these are good things for me to be thinking about as I'm going to be joining this team, about how I need to learn more about this. And then they can ask better questions. They can have better conversations to learn about these things, maybe in that final interview process, so they can learn what the differences are already, and they can start to prepare for that too.
Great point. And it's important to remember that we instruct our clients to try to aspire to be the most trusted voice in their industry. To answer everything, to be the as we say sometimes, the Wikipedia of their industry or the WebMD of their industry. Like everyone's going to go to you as a reference. And that article is such a great, is such a great example of that, because 99.9% of the insurance agents in the world will not work for Barry. They will work somewhere else. But they might click on that article and recognize Barry as a trustworthy, intelligent, well-spoken, well-researched brand that they can share, they can trust, they can reference, and that establishes Barry as a brand. And that's also really important. It's not, that's not going to necessarily fill their applicant funnel, but it's going to build who they are.
It's going to get people excited. If they don't qualify, maybe they live across the country and they're not going to be able to work with small businesses or smaller individuals in Massachusetts. It's going to make them interested in wanting to work for Barry Insurance because they're getting their education from another insurance agency. Now that's how to put this into a written context. And I have a video that I want to play, and you'll be able to listen to it. But if you want to watch it, I'll leave a link to it. And it's from another client of ours named Tunnel Data. And I'm going to share the screen. And this is how to apply it to a video. Now, there's a little bit of conversation to be had about the length of these videos, because if we talked about 80% videos in the past, these tend to be longer. Whereas the example that I'm going to share is only about 2 minutes long. So I'm going to go ahead and pull it up, and I want to show not only the page itself, but also the, if I could share my sound, I've got to do that too. I forgot. Sharing it over here is good. All right. So I share this page, and what's great is they go to their website and there's a video right at the top, and the thumbnail asks, are you thinking about applying to be our senior director of performance marketing? And then there's a video to play, and then you can scroll down and you can apply to the job, but it's the first thing that you see to apply now. Now I'm going to go ahead and play it, and we'll listen, and then we'll dissect it a little bit and see what comes out of it.
Hey, I'm David Seawright, officer at Tunnel. If you're watching this video, I hope that you are considering applying to be our new Senior Director of Performance Marketing. Now, what I'm not going to do here is just read the job description. You should read it, spend some time with it. What I want to convey here is the type of person we're looking to join our team. Now, the marketing team at Tunnel sits on a larger revenue team that includes marketing, of course, sales, and our partnerships team. And together, we all wake up every single day thinking about how to hit a few key goals. How do we hit our sales and bookings goal for the year? How do we grow subscription revenue? And how do we grow data revenue? We leverage marketing to create educated buyers, generate qualified leads, shorten sales cycles as we move towards hitting those goals. To do that, we want to be an educational force in our space. We want to educate buyers on the nuances of the larger market and of our product and of our data, so that they show up to sales meetings prepared and ready to understand how we can help them achieve their goals. To do that, we have a really robust content marketing strategy. And you should spend some time before you apply on our site, reading our Learning Center to get an idea of the type of content we want to generate to create educated buyers. But we need to expand this into video content, email marketing, social marketing, right down the list, so that we can broaden our search of finding qualified leads to come join us as we help take data to purpose-driven issue advocacy, cause, and corporate social responsibility marketing. Now, our team is made up of competitive, ambitious people, but we have a lot of fun. I like to say we are intense, but it's not a tense group. We are loose. We have a great time together. We're located here in Clarendon, in Arlington, Virginia, as you can see right behind us. And if you think you'd be a great fit to join our team, please apply. You'll be working for me. You'll be joining and managing a growing marketing team. And we think that we need a killer individual to really take us to the next level. So please apply. If you have any questions, you can email me directly. It's dseawright, SEAWRIGHT, @tunneldata.com. I'll happily answer any questions you have about the role, and I look forward to meeting you in the interview process.
So that's the video in a nutshell. And I think there's a few key takeaways that I have, John, but I'd love to hear, what did you take away from listening to that brief 2-minute video on their website?
I think it's great. It feels really genuine. You can see and hear his passion, his vision. You get a sense of what the company is. I think anyone who listened to that or watched it took away from it, like maybe some idea of what it would be like to work there. Maybe it's kind of a different take on it, but I could see it being a much longer video, or somewhat longer video that goes into more, here's who's on the team, here's what you're going to be doing each day, here's what your responsibilities are, what those key metrics that he talked about, maybe some specifics around those. But that isn't really the spirit of this video. It feels very much like an encouraging, welcoming, get to know our team, get to know the role type video. And it feels like it does a lot in 2 minutes. What did you think, Connor?
Yeah, I wrote down a couple things as we were watching it. He mentions that they are education first, which is a big thing that we talk about, but he actually references this as an action for them to take, whether before or right after they apply, is to go look at their learning center, to go explore their website. I thought that was a great piece of this video. I completely hear what you're saying, and I think there would be arguments for, should this have more information up front before they applied, or maybe there's a video afterwards once you apply to learn more from it. And maybe there's a little bit of, it's a data company. Maybe they're hiding certain things until someone applies and shows serious interest. But at the same time, they said, go watch more, go consume our content in our learning center, learn what we're going for here, and then how you can fit into something, and helping them understand that they're part of a growing team. Yeah, there's some details they probably could have added on, but it's quick, it's snappy, it gives them a brief idea, and it gives them actions to take. If they have questions, they can reach out to him before applying, or they'll be hearing from him through the hiring process. But what it tries to do, and the vanguard at the beginning, which is what we like to say at Impact, the kind of the guardrails for what this video is going to be, is it's not going to be him just reading the job description to you. Instead, it's going to be a little bit more that's outside of the job description. It's giving them a little more context into what kind of company it is. So you can make the initial, am I interested or am I not? And then they can learn more later.
Yeah, 100%. And as you said before, it's good to remember that this is right on the hiring page, right on the application page. So this is very much early on, and some of the information I was talking about wouldn't make sense at that point. It would only make sense for a candidate who was further along in the process. But what I think we're seeing broadly, Connor, in all of these is a willingness to build trust, to be straightforward, to be transparent, and to be patiently educational with our applicants, which are all core tenets of inbound marketing. And in this tight labor market where it is so hard to find the talent we seek, it just feels like the right way to go about it. It's a very human process that when we take that out of it, or when we don't put that into it, it can feel very cold and very austere. And when we look at a video like that, when we read the content like Barry has written, it suddenly feels like this person's really talking to me. They care about me and my needs and what I can bring to their team. And if I'm looking at 10 jobs and that's the only one that had a video that really spoke to what I'd be doing, I'm immediately more connected with Tunnel than I am those other 9.
They understand where you're at. They know that you as a candidate probably are looking for some information. You may be exploring this job market for the first time in a while, and they're giving you the resources to say, is this the right potential opportunity for me? And give you some of that information that you need along the way. I think that's a great way to wrap it up. And, if you're experiencing a lot of this, we want to hear more about it. This is a topic that we're hearing a lot about, not only in our communities, but just in the industry as a whole. And we want to continue this conversation. So if you're hearing a lot about this, either connect with John or I, or leave a comment down below if you're watching on our YouTube channel, because we'd love to hear more about what you're experiencing and maybe some examples of how you're applying this to your hiring efforts at your organization. But this has been another great episode of Solving Inbound. Today, we talked about applying inbound marketing to your hiring process. There's certainly more opportunities than what we discussed, but we wanted to give you some really good starting points that we're seeing be extremely successful for the organizations that we mentioned and for a lot more out there. But thank you all so much for listening. And until next time, my friends, have a good one.